Each of these islands has their own unique geography, climate, and history. The world seems to get smaller and smaller. Humans have traveled more today than any time in history, and experienced travelers are looking for the most exclusive and remote places to visit. Often these islands are being visited by expedition and luxury small ships as part of larger itineraries. They may also be visited by merchant and cargo vessels that accept passengers. The South Atlantic is rich in history and maritime lore. Some of these islands were the staging point for the last great expeditions on Earth to discover, map, and explore the continent of Antarctica. If these destinations are on your bucket list, or if you've visited these islands, be sure to comment. Also, let us know if we've missed any out-of-the-way destinations that you want to know more about. Okay, let's get started with a place that is visited fairly frequently on South American cruises, and is a great starting point for visiting the South Atlantic Islands. While not as exclusive as other locations on this list, it's a fascinating place to visit. Number 5 on our list is the Falkland Islands. The Falklands are located 480 kilometers east of the Patagonian coast at a latitude of 52 degrees south. The territory consists of 2 main islands, East Falkland and West Falkland, and around 776 other smaller islands. The capital and largest community is Stanley, which is located on East Falkland. Unlike some of the other locations on this list, the Falklands have a permanent population of 3,600 residents. The discovery of the Falklands is usually credited to Captain John Strong, who landed in 1690 while en route to Peru and Chile. Captain Strong named the channel that separates the two islands the Falkland Strait in honor of the Viscount Falkland, Treasurer of the Navy, who sponsored his voyage. It wasn't until 1765 that Captain John Byron of the Royal Navy claimed the islands in the name of King George III and named them the Falkland Islands. The Falklands are a remote and windswept place with a diverse and inspiring landscape of white sand beaches and fantastic wildlife spotting opportunities on both land and sea. The islands are home to an abundance of bird life, including the albatross, which is amongst the largest of the flying birds, geese, petrels, and of course penguin colonies. As many as 1 million penguins take up residence each summer, representing 5 of the 17 species. Species include the king, gentoo, rockhopper, Magellanec, and macaroni penguin. The Falklands are one of the most accessible places in the world for wildlife observation, in particular for the gentoo penguin, which lives on the islands all year round. In addition to birds, the coastline is also home to seals, dolphins, and of course whales. The island also has a long maritime and military history, with over 300 shipwrecks lining its shores. Memorials for both British and Argentine soldiers can be found around the island, a reminder of the war in 1982. Numerous claims for the islands have been made over the course of its history, but the island remains a self-governing British overseas territory. Finally, a visit to Stanley is a must. The town features a Victorian feel with tea houses, gardens, hotels, and brightly colored homes. The Anglican Cathedral, the southernmost in the world, stands on Stanley's waterfront. Even in town, the Falklands wildlife is evident, with dolphins and sea lions in the harbor, and abundance of seabirds at the water's edge and overhead. The Falkland Islands are visited by many of the major cruise lines, predominantly between December and March. Some visit only for a day, while smaller ships, including expedition vessels, may stay for a few days at different locations. Number 4 on our list is South Georgia Island. The island is a British overseas territory and is included on many Antarctic expedition voyages. South Georgia Island is approximately 165 kilometers long and 35 kilometers wide, located 1,300 kilometers east of the Falkland Islands. There is no permanent population on South Georgia Island, although there have been various research stations, military posts, and whaling stations on the island over the years. While South Georgia Island was first sighted in 1675, it wasn't until 1775 that James Cook, the famed British naval officer and explorer, circumnavigated the island and made the first landing, claiming the island for the Kingdom of Great Britain. Its remote location and lack of permanent population make it one of the least visited destinations on Earth. The climate is considered sub-Antarctic and is an unspoiled paradise for wildlife both on land and in the nutrient-rich waters. Huge populations of king penguins, fur seals, and elephant seals can be found around the shorelines. Offshore, whales including humpback, blue, and southern right whales can be found. Ships visiting South Georgia will offer a variety of wildlife-related excursions depending on the weather conditions and wildlife reports. You'll also visit the historic community of Grit Vican, a former whaling station that's known for its memorial to Ernst Shackleton. The famed explorer's expedition to the Weddell Sea in Antarctica left South Georgia in 1914. The story of the Shackleton expedition is a must-read for all visitors to the Antarctic region. Ships will utilize zodiacs and kayaks for transportation, and will provide expert guides and naturalists to accompany you. Silversea Cruises, Viking Ocean, Seabourn, Scenic, and several expedition vessels all make regular stops to South Georgia as part of their Antarctic voyages and transatlantic trips. A visit to South Georgia is something not to be forgotten. Number 3 on our list is the island of Saint Helena. Saint Helena is a remote, volcanic island located 2,000 kilometers west of the African coast and 4,000 kilometers east of Rio de Janeiro in South America. At a latitude of 16 degrees south, the island is considered to be tropical, but constant trade winds blow and there are varied amounts of rains depending on the location. The island measures only 16 kilometers by 8 kilometers and is home to 4,400 people. Ships will visit the port of Jamestown on the northwest shore of the island, although there are several other communities around the island. The discovery of Saint Helena is widely disputed, although there is evidence that the island was known to Spanish explorers in 1500. The island wasn't immediately settled, but was used by Portuguese and Spanish sailors for fresh water and trees over the years. British and Dutch ships also visited, and while the Dutch claimed it in 1633, they never occupied it. Eventually it was settled by the East India Company and became a British overseas territory, as it is to this day. The island has a decidedly British feel, yet they have their own unique identity and culture. Before the airport opened in 2015, the only way to visit St. Helena was by ship. This included the Royal Mail ship St. Helena, a 5-day voyage between Jamestown and Cape Town, South Africa. The island is also a stopping-off point for transatlantic sailing yachts, around 600 per year. While the opening of the airport in 2015 connected St. Helena to the world, it's still a marvel to visit by ship like residents and visitors have for over 500 years. While visiting St. Helena, nature is the order of the day, with opportunities for walking, hiking, diving, photography, and other excursions both on land and around the coast. Snorkeling with whale sharks has also become popular during certain times of the year. You can also visit Longwood House, where Napoleon was exiled after the Battle of Waterloo, and explore other Victorian-era residences and architecture around town. Azamara, Seabourn, and Regent Seven Seas visit Jamestown during some of their transatlantic and world cruises. The island residents, referred to as saints, are proud of their heritage and unique place in the world, and enjoy showing off their saint culture. Number 2 on our list is Ascension Island. While very few cruise ships call on Ascension Island, it is possible to visit there several times per year. First discovered by Portuguese explorers in 1501, the island remained uninhabited until 1815, when a small British naval garrison was stationed there. At the time, the island was barren, dry, and treeless, with nothing growing near the coast. The island had several springs to provide drinking water and was carefully managed so not a single drop of water was lost. The island was visited by Charles Darwin in 1836 during the Second Beagle Voyage. Darwin later encouraged botanist and explorer Joseph Hooker to visit the island in 1843. Hooker later advised the Royal Navy that the island should be planted like a garden to improve soil conditions, water retention, and allow the barren island to thrive. From 1850 onwards, ships arrived with trees and plants, and by the late 1870s, a tropical cloud forest had taken root. Ascension Island is located at 8 degrees south, not far from the equator, 3,000 kilometers west of the African coast. The island is wild, dominated by Green Mountain, a 2,800-foot-high volcanic peak now surrounded by a dense forest of bamboo, banana trees, eucalyptus, and Norfolk pines, a marvel in early horticulture and transformation. The island has historically played a part as an important military post as well as a communications hub. Evidence of this can be found all over the island. While the island is in the tropical zone, it's considered to have a hot desert climate with very low rainfall. This climate is thought to be caused by the cold ocean currents flowing up from the South Atlantic Ocean. Half of the island's 800 residents call the capital of Georgetown home. The island is an important breeding ground for the endangered green sea turtle, who lay their eggs on the beach not far from the center of town. Sport fishing is a major draw for many visitors. The island also boasts that they have the worst golf course in the world. Hiking, walking, and photography of the unique flora and fauna also draws visitors. Seabourn Cruises visits the island several times per year, as do several smaller expedition ships. Other than rare visits by cruise ships, the only other way to get to the island is with the Royal Air Force. It's an exceedingly rare place to visit. It's time for number 1 on our list. Welcome to Tristan da Cunha, the world's most remote inhabited island group. Tristan da Cunha is a remote group of volcanic islands lying approximately 4,000 kilometers east of the Falkland Islands and 2,800 kilometers west of Cape Town, South Africa. The main island has a diameter of roughly 11 kilometers and has a population of approximately 250 permanent residents. In addition to the main island, the territory also consists of Gow Island, Inaccessible Island, and Nightingale Island, which are nature reserves and uninhabited. The island was first spotted in 1506 by Portuguese explorer Tristan da Cunha, though rough seas prevented a landing. He named the main island after himself and carried on with his voyage. There is some debate about who first set foot on the island, but the first undisputed landing was made in 1643 by the crew of a Dutch East India Company ship. The first charts of the island were made by the Dutch in 1656. The island was first colonized in 1810 and more widely inhabited later in the 1800s. The island's sole settlement is called Edinburgh of the Seven Seas and named after Prince Alfred, Duke of Edinburgh, who was the second son of Queen Victoria in honor of his visit in 1867. In 1961, St. Mary's Peak erupted very close to Edinburgh of the Seven Seas, forcing an evacuation of the island by small boats. The residents were picked up the next day by a Dutch passenger ship and taken to Cape Town, where they were eventually given transport to the United Kingdom. They returned to the island in 1963 following a Royal Society expedition to the island to confirm that Edinburgh of the Seven Seas had survived the eruption. Tristan da Cunha has a very small tourism industry due to its remoteness, and with no deep harbor, getting ashore is highly dependent on the weather and maritime conditions. There is no airstrip, so arrival by ship is the only option. While visiting Tristan da Cunha, you'll have the opportunity to see rare wildlife, including the Atlantic-nosed albatross, Tristan thrush, and many more. The northern rockhopper penguin visits to breed and raise their young annually, and of course, whales, dolphins, seals, and sea lions can be found around the island. Expeditions to Tristan da Cunha will often include visits to Nightingale Island and Gow Island for wildlife spotting opportunities, hiking, and exploration. A visit to Tristan da Cunha is a bucket list item for many experienced travelers, often never to be repeated. Seabourn, Silversea, Saint Helena, and other small expedition vessels visit the islands a couple of times each year. We hope you've enjoyed our trip through the South Atlantic Islands, exploring places well off the beaten path. Be sure to check out our other videos of remote islands and start planning your next trip today. Be sure to like this video, comment, and subscribe for more content like this as we bring you around the world for the best in premium, luxury, and expedition cruise travel.